So in this video, we're going to be taking a look at some best practices for topology. And I've got this scene here, and we've already got everything kind of proxy modeled out. I'm just going to take the geo folder and actually hide that. I'm going to get Control H. I'm going to bring up the grid and have the grid available for us. So I'm going to go say create polygon primitives. I'm going to do a cube, and this time I'm going to make this maybe 100 by 100 by 100. And hit apply for that, and we're just going to start out with a cube like this. So one thing I wanted to kind of show you with topology that I think is important is to always work very simple and build up for complexity for things. One thing that you can do to kind of check your model along the way and make sure everything's working with it okay is to tap 3, and that is the smooth mesh preview. So it's kind of like in ZBrush. If you're adding subdivision levels to something, you can check out what the model would look like if you were going to push it into a program like ZBrush and add subdivisions to it. So as I tap 3, it's going to give me this preview mesh. If I hit Control A and bring up the attribute editor, yours might be docked over there. I like to rip that off and just kind of tear it off within there. And if we go to take a look at the mesh display options for this, let's go to where is it? There it is under there. We're going to go to Mesh Component Display, open that up, and then go to Smooth Mesh, open this up within here, and you can see this is the actual divisions level, and we can show the divisions if you wanted to take a look at what that looks like. So you could go even higher for something like this and put it on something like 4 or something, and you can see you get a really nice kind of smooth model. So you can see in this instance, if you take a cube, you can turn it into a sphere. I'm going to drop this back down to 2 for the preview. That helps everything to kind of run kind of quick. Now there is a thing where we can go modify and we can go convert and say smooth mesh preview to polygons like this. So you can see how we've got something that was square turned into a sphere and how the geometry kind of turns within here. And now we've got edge loops that kind of go all the way around the model this direction and this direction. But as we get into these corners, if we tap 3 on this, you can see we're going to do a smooth mesh preview on that conversion that we had on here. You can see how these corners kind of meet right in here, and it produces these different quads, but it's 3 different quads kind of joined together to build this pattern that kind of moves from a top to a front to a side and then combines those all together. So that kind of comes in handy whenever you're thinking about making geometry for, say, something for even like a face or something like that, right? So I can select this edge here. I can double click on the Move Tool options, turn on Symmetry, and do Object X. And you can see if we hold down B and kind of do soft select like this, we can kind of click and drag this out just a little bit like this. And we're kind of pushing and pulling things in a way that we could build up something like the shape of the skull. And we're not going to do anything too perfect or too crazy with this. We're just going to kind of take a look at this and move and manipulate these things. And we're going to take this part here and just kind of pull it in just a little bit. So you can see from just that alone, we can start to build some topology that feels a little bit more like a skull kind of shape within here. And I'm going to take F9 and I'll take this and raise it up just a little bit and then pull that in slightly while I'm taking this and kind of pulling it out within through here like that. But the point of that is to show you that if we go create polygon primitives and go to our cube, that pattern still holds in through here. And you can see that this more complex object is following some of the same principles for this. We've got a front, top, side, and how those all kind of join together. Now if you're splitting this apart manually, I can hold down Shift, right click on an object mode and say multi-cut tool, and I could take this and slide it down the middle. And this tool does not like symmetry. I'm just going to turn symmetry off for just a second, and we'll go put it back on the multi-cut tool, and I can hold down Shift and it'll snap right to the center for that. Put this back on. I don't think I'm going to need the symmetry to be off anymore for this, so I'll double click that. And you can see I can put something down here and something here. Now as we've got these different points that we're starting to work with, I can hit F9, grab the vert for this, and the reason that's working in symmetry, and even though it's pushed off from the center of the world like this, is because we've got symmetry, and we're using symmetry with the object, not the world. If we're wanting to use the world coordinates for that, then this would be set to world X, not object X. So I'm taking these points, I'm kind of pulling these in just a little bit, and taking this one, pushing it up, pulling this one down, and you can see how manipulating these points in this way starts to build rounding for us. Just like this. I'm going to pull these parts in and pull this part in. So we can do this stuff manually. It's going to take a little bit more time to kind of do that. Now if I tap 3 for the smooth mesh preview for that, you can see kind of the quality that we're getting from manipulating things in that kind of way. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and delete this one and get rid of it just like that. Something that you want to know for something like eyes and mouths is that for the topology for that, I'm going to go create polygon and primitives, and I'm going to make a sphere. I'm going to scale this sphere up, and I'm going to rotate it. I'm just going to put on the rotate tool, hold down J, and kind of rotate it forward like this. And then I'm going to use, under modeling, there is a tool that I like quite a bit, and it's called the Create Polygon tool. So if we go Create Polygon tool, and we go to the front, I'm going to tap the space bar, go to the front of this, tap 4 for the wireframe, and then I'm going to start laying out point, 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 and point, 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 and make this kind of shape here. And this is going to give me the shape of what I would use for the beginning of an eye. Now I'll take the space bar, I'll hit F9 to go to the verts for this, and then I'll start to pull the verts forward until this eyelid would sit and have a certain amount of thickness over the eye. So these, I know that I can just push these back in space for Z because I want this to kind of wrap around the eyeball itself. And go to the bottom here, and I might pull this down just a little bit, pull this in, and maybe pull this in here just a little bit like that, and then move this back, not too far though. Might have to pull this forward just a little bit and take the tear duct and then push that in just a little bit like that. So the next thing I could do is double click this and shift right click and say extrude edge, and we can do an offset. So we can offset this, and I'll offset it about this much and do a thickness just to pull it in ever so slightly. And then now I can take this F9 and go move these points around, and I'm going to kind of pull this down within here just a little bit, kind of finesse the shape of this a little bit more. And I actually want a little bit more geo here, here, and here. So I'm going to hit F8, select this, shift right click and go to the multi-cut tool, and hold down control, and then just add some more geo right in here. Let's turn symmetry off. And then I go ahead and go back to this, and then use the multi-cut tool, and split here and here. And now that we got more points, like as you work, you can see we were kind of working a little bit rougher, and then we added more geo. Now we need to do something with that geometry. So every time you do something with the geometry, you should actually do something with it, right? So you can see I'm taking the geometry and I'm building more curvature with this at this point. Kind of pulling this in, pulling this in. Right here. And I'm going to pull this in just a little, and then I'm just kind of relaxing these and building a little bit more rounding and curvature for this. Okay. Now if we tap 3 on this, we can kind of see what's starting to be built with that, but we do have some issues that we kind of need to work with and kind of resolve. So I'm going to hit F11 and select this face, and I'm going to extrude the face. I'm going to offset it just slightly, holding down Control and dragging in so we can build just a little bit of a lip, and then take that lip and pull it straight backwards like this. And I'm going to tap G again to do my last command. Put this on world space movement, then pull this back within here, and then I'm going to tap G one more time and pull that in like this, and this time I'll offset it and drag it and make it a little bit smaller. So I'll tap wireframe so you can see what's going on here like this. So now if I tap 3, tap 5, you can kind of see what's going on with the eyeball here. Now it does look a little like excited and too kind of crazy, so I could take this and select the edges, move them, but I'm going to tap B to turn on the soft modification tool, and then I can take this and kind of move these things forward, and you can see it's acting a whole lot more like an eyelid at this point. And I can select this object right here and tap 3 too to make that a little bit smoother for that. So I'll select this and kind of just move this forward. But you can see how I'm working with the smooth mesh preview. I'm working with geometry that's a lot more simplified, and it makes moving things and finessing shapes, things like that, it just makes it a lot easier and a lot easier to kind of manage. So if I've got any suggestion for you, it's just work more simple at the very beginning and then build up complexity over time. Kind of like this. So you can see how that's starting to work for this. So you need to have something that's ocular like this for the eye. And if I go to the modeling toolkit, we can either go to object mode, shift right click, and do multi-cut. We can get to it that way, or go to the modeling toolkit and go to multi-cut that way. Now it's really easy to add. Hold down Control, and I can just add geometry here and here, and then that gives me enough to kind of start playing with for animation. Now if I wanted a little bit more curvature to this, I'm going to tap B to turn off the soft mod, double click the edge loop on here, and just kind of pull this a little bit forward, and then take this one and pull that a little bit forward, and you can see how we're building some roundness to that lid shape that we've got going on here. So I'll just select this just a little bit, kind of pull this forward, maybe move it down just a little bit, then through here. So you can see how we built a shape like that pretty easily. If I turn the grid back on, I'm going to hit the spacebar and go right here. And what we had before is we had the mesh tools, and we did the create polygon tool. So if I did this again, if I hold down X and I just snap to here, and if I do some kind of shape for what would be the start of a mouth, I could do point like this, and that will make a quad, well, not a quad, but make a polygon shape for us. And we can do the multi-cut tool, and we can click and drag from this vert to this one, and I'll tap Y for my last tool. Let's do this and this, and maybe drag from here to here like that. And I'll hit F9 and just kind of pull this down. Because remember, if we add geo, we should really do something with it. And it's probably going to be a little bit easier for us to control the shape at this level. I'm going to turn the grid off, and we'll select this, and let's just use the mirroring tool that they've got. They've got mesh mirror, and we can do this, and we can tell it to mirror across the x-axis like this, and it should join it together for us. Now this is all super flat right now at this point, so we can hit F10, select our edges, and then kind of move these forward just a little. It looks like the verts on this need to be snapped, so I'm going to use the target weld on the modeling toolkit and just click and drag that, and that should weld that thing up. Let's take a look at symmetry settings and turn that on. Okay, so now I can just click and drag these and kind of move them out. And what I'm doing is moving them forward a little bit here, and then moving these backwards a little bit. So I'm building the arcs and the curvature of what would be going on with the lips. And the top part of the lip should come forward more than the bottom part of the lip, kind of like that. And what I could do now is just, there's another tool that I could show you, and it is under here for the Append to Polygon tool, and we can click on a piece of geometry that's already established. I'm going to go to the space bar, and if we follow this direction that we've got going on here, we can click and then add to this direction. So I'll hit enter for that. We're going to use the multi-cut tool again, and then drag from here to here. This tool has lots of problems with symmetry. So in the modeling toolkit, you can actually turn that off within there. So here we go. I'm going to select that, tap Y for my last tool. Click and drag from there, tap Y. Click from there to there, tap Y. Tap Y. Now I would like for this, if I hold down Control, I want an edge loop to flow all the way around for this, and it's just currently not giving us that as an option. So I'm going to take this and add just a little bit of a split here. I'm going to right click in here and say Face, and tap Q to get out of that tool. Select that part, and that's going to delete that. Now if we use the multi-cut tool, the reason it's not going around all the way now is because we have an end gun going on here. So if we click and were to drag this out here like this, I'm going to tap enter, and if I click just one point and hit enter, that's going to give us quad. So if I hit F9, you can see that we've got some new geometry here. Let's take a look and see if this goes around at this point. I don't think it likes it because it's still connected here. So I'm going to go all the way from here, hit enter, tap Q, hit F11 to go to my faces like this. And let's see now, let's see if we can get this to move. I'm going to tap B to move this off here. And I might take these and just use the target weld tool like this. And I'm going to have to use the multi-cut tool, split from here to here. I'm just going to build a new quad, and I'll hit F11 or F10, sorry, select that edge and hit delete. And so now we're going to use the multi-cut tool, and it still does not want to go all the way around. So I'm going to just manually do this real quick. So I'm going to drag from here to here and build out like this. And so it looks like what I've got going on here, I've got too much geo. Hold F9, do the target weld. And now I got quads going on here. I'll hit F11. Get rid of these pieces. So now I've got more of an ocular kind of flow for this. If I hit F8, and go out here and take a look, and we're going to go to Mesh, and then we'll do Mirror like this, and I'm just going to join these to the center. Control right click and say Merge Vertices to Center. Tab G for this, and I got some extra geo. I'm going to delete this. This is probably like leftover from whenever using the multi-cut tool. Sometimes it kind of could cause problems, so I'm just going to merge all that stuff together. Shift right click, say Merge Vertices to Center, kind of like that. And now if I tap 3, we can kind of see what's going on with this. There is still a problem down the center. I didn't merge those together. Shift right click, say Merge Vertices to Center. Tab G for my last command for that, and then tap 3. So now you can kind of see what's going on here. I got some extra geo there that was floating. And now let's try to do Mesh Mirror. Okay, so now everything's nice and clean. So we're able to see me just kind of clean up some of that geo. And the next thing I can do is take these points, move them, and hold down V, and I can snap them to this part here. And then move this. And let's move this back. Let's move these back. And we'll move these parts back. So let's move this down. I'm just going to finesse the shape of the lip a little bit more now at this point. And I'm going to do 1/2 because I'm going to mirror everything across. Kind of like this. I'm going to pull that in right here and then tap 3. You can see what we've got, what we're kind of building here now at this point. And now we're going to go to Mesh and we'll do Mirror. And you can see now we've built a pretty clean shape for something like the lips within there. So we want to keep these things set up this way in this ocular kind of fashion for not only being able to add a little bit more geo like this, but also for animation purposes. So when you start to animate these things, it's easy to take this type of geometry and open it and close it. And the mouth is already closed, but then you can see what it would be like to actually open the mouth up. We could select F11, select some faces, turn the soft mod thing on, and then you could move that part open, and you can see how you can start to open the mouth at that point as well. Okay, so the next thing let's talk about is, let's hide these, and we're going to turn the grid back on, and we're going to go to our cube and say create polygon primitive, and we'll do a cube, and we're going to talk about holding edges. So there's 2 different methods that we can do. I'm going to duplicate this and move it off to this side over here. So one method involves us doubling up on our edges. So if I use the multi-cut tool and if we hold down control, you know that you can add an edge loop. And if we added geo along all the edges on here and try to get some even spacing, I'm just kind of eyeballing it. I'm not being too exact or anything with this. And we tap 3 for the smooth mesh preview, you can see what we get for a cube. Now it's possible that we can take this cube, tap 3 for it, and it's going to turn it into the sphere. But if we select all the edges in here, we can go to our mesh tools and go to crease, and then we can take this and middle mouse drag to the left or the right to put a creasing amount on here. Now you know that if we take this smooth mesh preview version of this model, we've already looked at this and said if we go to modify, convert smooth mesh preview to polygons, we can get a division on that. I'm not a big fan of the shading on here, but if we tap G to convert this one over, you can see kind of the problem of doubling up edges and what it does. You've got these big polygons within this area, and then along the edges you've got a lot of geometry kind of built up for the edges. So that might be acceptable for you, might be okay, but when you go to sculpt on this, you're going to get much better and more predictable results by sculpting on something like this that's nice and even, and the edges are held that way versus edges held with a bunch of geo here, because if you subdivide this model, it's going to divide these little tiny polygons really tightly, and you'll have a lot of detail that you could sculpt in these areas, but you sculpt in here and it's not. So that's the main kind of difference between these two different methods. The shading of this does not look very good at all. So what I've found that you might have to do is like delete the history on this. You might have to maybe tap 3 for the smoothing of it again at that point, or you can tap 1. And if you want to get rid of all the creasing information, hit F10, select your edges, and you would have to go to the Crease Tool again, and then you can middle mouse drag to the left. Now when we tap 3, you can kind of see what happens. It kind of rounds out those corners. Now if we wanted to selectively select, let's say, the top of this and harden the edges of that, I'm selecting these, and I can middle mouse drag that to the left or to the right at that point. And at that point I'm selectively saying which edges are going to be harder edge and softer edge for this. So it's a way that you can get away with modeling with a lot less and have a good look. So this look doesn't look so great for the shading inside of Maya, but you push it to other programs and it easily can shade a little bit better. So I'm just going to select those faces and shift right click and say Extrude Face, and I'm going to push this down and push this in. And then I want to show you, if I select these edges, just holding down shift and adding to that selection, that I can go back to that Crease Tool. I'm going to tap 4 just to make sure I didn't select anything down below. Tap 5, and let's go to the Crease Tool. And let's see if we shift right click, you can actually get to it this way too. If we shift right click and go to the Crease Tool there, and I can select these edges and just crease them this way. Now if I want these to be hard edge like this, I could do that. So you can play around and kind of get some different results with this. And so you might want some rounding in this area, but you want those to be nice and crisp, or you want these all to be crisp like that. You can see how you can get away with making a lot more complex shapes pretty easily by just using this creasing tool. And let me select this one and drag that to the left and get rid of it. And maybe we crease these, and you can kind of see what's going on. The other thing is you can actually crease vertices too. So if you want to crease a vert, hit F9, and you can crease that, and you can pull out these like really sharper, more crisp vertices at that point. So you can get some interesting results with that as well. So that's just something else for you to kind of keep in mind for what's a possibility and what's available for you with the creasing tool. I don't believe I've tried faces with the creasing tool. Let's just see what happens. And nothing happens. So I can convert those to Control F10. I can convert those to edges, and we could pull these out and make that nice and crisp for that. So hopefully you can see some of the options for this, what that's going to give you control wise. But again, it's a way that you can use very simple geometry and make much more complex shapes. Now, the only other part that we'd want to kind of talk about is if you're going to actually get this outside of Maya and get into another program like ZBrush, we are going to have to go through that process where we do modify, convert, smooth mesh preview to polygons, and you're going to have to give it some count that you want to push in there. So, like to me, like 2, that would give us a very nice option for that. On this also, so like let's just say we go higher, we go 3, and let's just delete the history on it. Let's select all the edges and let's put on the Crease Tool and then remove the creasing information and then tap 3 again. You can see we get possibly, let's turn off the wireframe when shaded. You get a nice, really kind of bevel effect at that point with the geometry that's been created. So again, just some different options for how you can explore and create topology and manipulate it with inside of Maya.